Finally, here are some miscellaneous things that you may want to be aware that Fiddler is capable of doing. It can simulate modem speeds, so there's a performance setting that will allow you to have Fiddler automatically add in delays, so you could see what the web page might look like if somebody were on a slow bandwidth connection. You can save raw files, so if you have a set of images in your session trace, you could click all of those and easily export them all to a zip. Visual Studio Web Test is able to import the archive files, so it's possible to use Fiddler to trace and record the sessions of what you would like to have tested in your website, and then you're able to import that directly into Visual Studio Web Test. You can encrypt your archive files, so in the case where you have sensitive information you're sending back and forth, you can encrypt it with a password. It uses 128-bit AES. It is capable of doing 256-bit via preference settings as well. By default, Fiddler only shows one archive at a time, so if you were to want to pull up two archives side by side, you can use the dash viewer option. So it's a read-only copy of those archives, so you can see and have multiple instances of read-only Fiddler up so you can compare archives. There is a text wizard for conversion, so it's common when you're looking at data coming back in a web conversation that you may want to look at that data in a particular way, like maybe take off base 64 encoding, things like that. So there is a text wizard that makes those conversions very easy. There's also an HTTP sandbox, so if you want to play with some of the techniques for tampering and how you can use Composer, they've got a safe place for you to do that, so you don't need to create the server-side part of the conversation. He's got a sandbox set up so that you can use the Fiddler features knowing that you're not impacting your production website. And lastly, you can also create custom inspectors. So we're not going to go into that in this module or this course, but it is possible to write your own custom inspectors if you have a certain type of traffic that's going for your website and you want to write a custom inspector to view what that would look like. For instance, someone has created a WCF binary inspector. So if you need to look at particular traffic and there's not a good inspector, be aware that you can actually create your own. Let's see how simulating modem speeds has an impact on how quickly the web page can be downloaded. So we've seen the page for performance before we made enhancements throughout this course. So I'm going to go to that same page. It is local on my machine, but what's going to happen when I pick simulate modem speeds, Fiddler is going to add some artificial delay before the requests go to the web server and before the responses are given back to me as a client. So let's look at how much slower this page loads now. So again, I don't have that many requests, but as the requests are going, we can add delay. We can add to Fiddler script or extensions if we want to change the numbers that are used here as far as how much delay is added to simulate the modem speeds. But as we'll see, this is going to slowly bring in the before page, and then we'll be able to pull up the after page and see how much faster it is after we made the performance improvements that we wanted to make, what a difference that would make if you happen to have a slow bandwidth connection. So you can see it's downloaded most of the files. It was waiting for the jQuery. You can see them that come in here as we go, and then some of the big images are starting to come in here for the slideshow. So again, it gives me an impression of if I have users that have slower connections, what type of experience are they going to have. So let me stop this. I can go back into Fiddler. I'm going to clear out the cache again. And let's go do the same thing with the after, just to see how much the performance improvements we made, what kind of impact that would have on download speeds. So again, this is also local, but this is the site that has the combined files, the minified files, the smaller images. We'll see how much faster this one actually loads. You can see that was quite a dramatic difference. So again, it's a useful tool inside of Fiddler to give you a brief idea of what the experience would be like for people with slower connections. Fiddler does have the capability to password protect the archive files. So if you've got something in the trace you don't want just anyone to be able to see while it's stored on disk or while you transmit it to someone else to look at, you can save the archive with a password. So let's take a look at how to do that. We'll go to our page again. In this case, obviously, there's nothing I need to worry about, but if I were concerned about some of this information, I can simply say File, Save All Sessions, and then one of the options is to pick a password-protected SAZ file. Now when I save, it's going to ask me for a password. And I can hit OK. So now the archive is going to be stored with that password if I want to load that again. It's going to prompt me for that password before I can see the archive. And again, this uses 128-bit AES encryption, so it's pretty decent encryption to keep people from being able to view sensitive information you might have within your captures. If I wanted to save off a series of files that I have from a session trace, that's relatively straightforward as well. If I go to this page again, let's say I want to take all of the images from this page, I can simply go select those sessions and choose File, Export Sessions, and we'll do just the selected ones. And one of the choices here is just raw files. Now it asks me where I want to place this export file, so we'll just drop this on the desktop. We'll export it. Now if we go look at the desktop, we can see we've got a new folder, and there are my 4 files. So it's just a convenient way to save off specific files. You could always right-click on each session. This just makes it more convenient when you have a decent number of files that you want to save off. There's going to be many times when you use Fiddler to look at web pages where you're going to run across data that you want to convert from one format to another. So Fiddler has a text wizard. So I could do things like, what if I want to see what this looks like if it were HTML encoded? I can just choose to HTML encode and see. So again, there's a lot of times you'll have base 64 URLs that are encoded, HTML that is encoded, so you can use the text wizard as a quick way to do conversions back and forth between various types. If you want to be able to use Fiddler and test out doing manipulation of requests, responses, tampering, and things like that, you can use the fiddler2.com/sandbox area. So this is a specific area where you can go and test out features knowing you won't impact your production website. So let's start up Fiddler, and we'll look at the shopping cart example. So the idea here is you have a standard website, you're able to order some products. So let's say we want to check out and order this, and you'll see the price. If we go back to Fiddler, we'll see if I take this to the composer, I can see that it's just posting to that page. If we look down below, you'll notice there's a cost. Well, instead of paying $1,095, what would happen to the website if I just specified it was $1.95? This would be a fine example of why you don't store your price in a field that the server then just takes blindly. So if I take this and re-execute this request, you'll now see the response. And if I look at the inspectors, I'll see that you've placed an order for one Acer convertible tablet PC. Order will be billed to your credit card at a cost of $1.95 each. So it's just an example of how you can learn to use Composer, how you can tamper with requests without impacting your site. Now let's look at the response status code generator. As you can see, this gives us the capability of changing what the HTTP status code sent from the web server to the client is to see how the client would react. So if I put in a typical 500, which is a server error, we'll see how IE is going to react. It just says it can't display this page. If we do a 404, you'll see it gives a web page cannot be found. So it's an easy way for you to generate specific status codes on the web server so you can see how your client will react.